We're in clinic this morning with Dr. Mark Offer, who's seeing Mrs. Sylvia Edwards. Mrs. Edwards had been under investigation by her GP for fibromyalgia, and some abnormal test results suggested that she should be referred to haematology. She came to clinic 2 weeks ago. Investigations on that occasion showed a paraprotein of 19 grams per litre, a bone marrow biopsy revealed 8% plasma cells, and a skeletal survey was negative. She's come back to clinic to see Dr. Offer today so that he can discuss these results with her. She does not know the results herself at this stage.
Mrs. Edwards, thank you for coming back to clinic this afternoon. Last time we met, we'd spoken a little bit about how there was an abnormality in the blood test, which was causing some anxiety and concern, both to you and your GP.
Yes.
And what we'd arranged to do is to repeat some blood tests, but also have a bone marrow test. Thank you for having that done. They're not the most comfortable.
No, I didn't enjoy that at all.
No, I realise that. Okay, thank you. But they're very useful in us trying to work out what's going on, because I realise that this can cause anxiety and worry, and the quickest that we can get to the bottom of this and find out what's going on, the better I think.
Well, I've been worrying. You know, I've said to Colin, I don't understand, you know, because the GP said that, you know, it's the fibromyalgia, and then he's just sent me up here because of a blood test, you know.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, the blood test, when people think blood, there's a problem in the blood, they often think the worst. And they think, well, there's all sorts of abnormal blood conditions. There's a whole range of blood conditions that we deal with, and we really didn't know what was going on, and that's why we needed the information. But we've got some of that information today, and so what I'd like to do is just sit and chat through that with you now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The blood test we spoke about last time, the abnormality is an extra protein that's in your blood. Now, we've all got good proteins in our blood. For example, we've got albumin, which is the egg white protein, and they normally do a range of good jobs for us.
Yeah.
This protein hasn't always been in your blood, and I think will have developed over some time, but it has the potential just to misbehave and actually not do a good role, but actually cause problems in the future, okay?
Right.
The protein is actually a type of antibody, and antibodies are very good in helping us fight infections. They're part of your immune system. So you think, well, actually, if I've got lots of antibodies, I'm never going to get an infection again. Surely that's a good thing. But in this case, then the antibodies aren't working properly. Okay? So if anything, it means that your immune system won't be working so well. Okay?
Won't be.
Potentially. So that's one of the things that we needed to go on and fully investigate. Okay?
Right.
So you've got this extra protein in your blood, and this protein is made in the bone marrow, which is why we had to do the bone marrow biopsy, because the bone marrow is the production factory for it. Okay? So we can work out what's actually happening in the bone marrow by doing the biopsy. Okay? Now, there is good news from the result of the biopsy, actually, because the biopsy shows that although the bone marrow is making this protein, it's at a low level, and we don't think it's actually making a nuisance of itself. It's not causing any problems. Okay? So you may have had this protein for some time, and we've only found it because we've looked for it in the blood test. It's what we call an incidental finding. Okay?
Right.
There are a range of various conditions that this protein can be associated with. Okay? Some of which are very mild and indolent, and don't need any treatment and just require monitoring. And some of which are more aggressive, okay, and actually come under the term of a type of bone marrow cancer.
Cancer?
You might have thought that today when you came in and saw the haematology oncology unit. That might have worried you at all.
So you think it's cancer?
No, I don't. So the results of the test today mean that I can confirm it's not cancer. Okay, so that's why I say it's good news.
Well, what is it if it's not that then?
It's down the other end of a range of conditions, so it's down at the indolent, quiet, quiescent end of the range, where it won't actually cause any problems. What we want to do is we recognise that at some point in the future, in a small group of patients that have this protein, like you, it might become more aggressive. Okay?
What does that mean?
So at the moment,
So it might turn into cancer, is that what you're saying?
It might.
Yes.
So where we are at the moment.
So it is really?
Well, no, not really, because what we've been able to do with the blood test is to try and work out the risk of your protein turning into a cancerous condition, to myeloma. And we've been able to do that. Okay? So we've been able to sit there and say, well, if there was a group of people in a room like you that had this protein, which of those people in that room are more likely to have the more aggressive type of myeloma? And we've been able to do that with you. And the good news is that we think that you're in the low risk group. We don't think that there's a high chance of it moving forward.
But there's still a risk.
Let me put that risk to try and put it into perspective a bit, okay? We think that if 100 people, if there are 100 people with a protein like you in a room, okay, one of the 100 people would move from this condition, which has a name, it's called Mgus, instantly forgettable, but it's called Mgus. So one of the 100 each year would move from Mgus to myeloma. Okay, so 99 out of 100 people each year, it would sit being Mgus. Okay, so that means over 20 years, 20 people in the room of 100 people would go on to get myeloma, and 80 people wouldn't. So by far the vast majority over 20 years would still remain as having this low-grade background condition. Okay.
What can you do to stop it though?
There's nothing that we can do to stop it at the moment, but at the moment it doesn't need stopping because it's like a precondition. It's not actually an active cancer.
But it can turn into it.
It can do.
You know, and it's like, it's all right for you to say, I mean, you know, only 20 people, but I could be the first one of those people, couldn't I? I could.
We think that where you are at the moment means that you're at a very low risk of this happening, okay? If we thought that this was going to be myeloma or was verging to become myeloma, the more active type of the disease, then we would look to start treatment, but we don't, okay? What we do is you and I will enter a long-term relationship. You'll come and see me every few months.
Months?
So, well, when I say that, what I'm saying is that if I see you twice or 3 times a year, just to monitor things.
But that's, I mean, what if it's turning into cancer? You know, how are you going to know?
The blood tests are very useful in helping us work out whether it's turned to cancer, but equally how you are and the sort of symptoms and signs, they help us. But what I'd reassure you with is that I don't think that this will move into cancer very quickly, okay?
You think it will? You think it will?
I don't. So
But if you're going to leave me for months, you know, if I don't see you for months, then it can be all going on and happening. Why don't you start me treatment now, just to be safe?
I can understand that question, and it feels like I hear this a lot. We have people, it feels like there's the sword of Damocles hanging above them, and they're constantly living with the worry that's going to happen.
Exactly. I've been bad enough worrying about how these tests are going to turn out without worrying every day about, well, have I got cancer now or not?
What we will do is we will. I can certainly introduce you to other people who've got the condition. I've got lots of people in the clinic that have this condition that I've been seeing for many years. Okay, and I think that it would be really useful if you'd like to meet up with some of them and just talk about their experiences and how they were able to come to terms with this. But essentially, I have a message of reassurance for you today. Okay?
But why, you know? I mean, I'm sure they're all right with it and everything, but I don't want to be stuck worrying all the time, and I will. I can't help it. That's the sort I am.
I know,
you know, and so I don't mind. You know, if I have the treatment now, then that's sort of stops it in its tracks, doesn't it?
If we treat you now, the question is, what are we treating? Because we're not really treating anything. So what we would be, and you may never.
Well, this thing I've got, the protein stuff that I'm not supposed to have.
That's right.
Why can't you stop that?
Because at the moment we don't think it needs stopping. It's just there. It's not causing any harm. Okay. Whereas if we were to give you treatment to try and stop the production, that in itself has side effects associated with it. Okay. So the reason we don't treat this is that this is a precondition, and you may never need treatment. I could be sitting with you here in 15 years' time, and us not having needed to start any treatment.
But you might not be, you know, I mean, I'm not a very young woman, but I'm not old.
I know you're not.
You know, and
know
I'd feel a lot happier if you do something.
The best way that we can do this is to monitor you and reassure and keep going.
Well, I don't want to be waiting months. Can you see me a bit more often?
Well, the problem with doing it every more often is that it feeds the anxiety and the concern that you have each time you come up to clinic.
Well, no, I'd feel a lot safer because, you see, if things are happening, how am I going to know?
That's a very good question. The rate of how this condition progresses, it progresses very slowly, okay? Now, if it would become more active, then what tends to happen is that people become more symptomatic, okay? And when we talk about more symptomatic, the things that we're concerned about are people having significant infections, back-to-back pneumonias, having hospital admissions, those sorts of level of infections. You're still allowed to get coughs and colds because what I don't want to do is overly sensitize you and overly medicalize you, because essentially you're the same woman now that you were 3 years ago. You may well have had this protein there, so nothing's changed, okay? And although I've given this a label, I've given it a name, I haven't actually changed how you are as a person, okay? So you are allowed to have infections, you will get coughs and colds, but I just want to reassure you that when you get this, it doesn't mean that your condition is becoming more aggressive, okay?
Do you know what, Doctor? I can understand what you're trying to say, but it just seems hit and miss to me. You know, oh well, you might or you might not, and you know, it might, and then we'll know if you do. But you know, it just seems too vague.
Yeah, and I realise that actually sitting there and almost waiting for something to happen can be difficult. It can be very difficult. But we will be alongside you as doctors, okay? You will always have our nurse specialist to talk to if you have any concerns, to ring or speak to at any time.
Well, can I come up a bit more often then?
I don't think there's going to be any need for you to come up every so often, but I'll be very happy for you
But
to
I'm
ring.
not. I don't want to wait 4 months. I don't want. I mean, I can't. You know.
We've actually, I think we've got to. What I'm going to do is if it's all right with you, is to invite you to meet some people who've had this condition, Mgus, for some time, to sit down and talk through their experiences of how they found the diagnosis, how they found the monitoring, and then we can sit down and talk again. Okay? But essentially, my message today is one of reassurance.
So, can you say now that I haven't got cancer?
I can. Yeah, you haven't got cancer.
Definitely.
Definitely. So the
But I
investigation-
might get it because of this
We
Gus.
think that there's a low risk with this Mgus, so of it turning every year. Okay, so there's a very, very low risk. But what we'll be doing to go forward is we'll be monitoring you. So we monitor you with blood tests and we monitor and look out for symptoms. I realise it's worrying. Some people find it helpful to put a name and a label on the condition. Other people find that actually you've walked in here and although you were worried and didn't feel particularly well, you now have a condition that makes things even worse. Okay? What I'm saying to you as my take-home message is that nothing has changed and that we won't be needing to do anything, we won't be needing to change anything radically in your life, but all we'll be doing, if anything, is enhancing that by monitoring you and keeping an eye on you. What coming up to clinic does is it gives you access to an extra group of people to try and reassure you and help you if you don't feel well, okay? So that's me as a doctor, that's the nurse specialist, the myeloma nurse specialist, and then, as I said, we've got a local support group for people, and I can introduce you to people who've got this Mgus, who we've been following for years, who are well and nothing has happened to them.
So have I got to wait 4 months now before I see you again?
No. Would you like to see me? We can, because obviously it's caused a lot of anxiety. I'm very happy to see you sooner than that, and we can just go through things again. Okay?
Yes.
But over the longer term, I think the soonest that I'm going to need to see you will be 4 months. Okay, because the problem is that often what happens is that we see people it feeds their anxiety, and their anxiety gets worse being in an outpatient clinic. Whereas my message to you is go away and live your life, okay? Almost try and put it to one side, okay? And I know that's easy for me to say, not do that. But over time, we'll be able to help you to do that, and we will be there as a support for you, okay? And that's very much where our role will be.
So when will I see you again then?
Well, is there anyone else that can come up to clinic with you next time?
Yes, my husband Colin will come, yes.
So I'm very happy to see you again within the next couple of weeks, just to sit down and chat over things.
But I don't need anything now, is that what you're saying?
You'll need nothing now, and you'll need nothing in the next few months, and I'm optimistic that you won't need anything for the next few years, okay?
That it could turn to cancer.
There's a possibility, it's a low risk, but that's the reason that we're monitoring you, okay?
All right, well, I'll come next time with Colin then in a couple of weeks.
I think that would be good, just to try and allay any qualms and fears, and if we can explain that to your husband, I think having Colin sit down and listen to things would be really useful.
I'll come in a couple of weeks with Colin.
That'll be good, we can see you again.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for coming.
Thank you, Doctor.
Okay.
Mark, thanks for letting me sit in and go over the content of this this consultation. I'm going to start with Mrs. Edwards. What did you think was going to happen when you came?
I didn't really know. I've been worrying about the results because like he said, the bone marrow which was painful, and I thought this must be serious. So I didn't really know what to expect. So I was being very anxious about it. But I had no idea really.
And you sat through the conversation with Dr. Offer, and he's really had quite a complicated idea to get across to you. Just tell me a little bit about how he managed that.
Well, I find him a very nice doctor to talk to. You know, he's not patronising or anything like that. And he tried to explain about this Gus thing that he says, according to him, it's nothing to worry about, that they just keep their eye on it, but that it could turn into cancer. Well, you know, and he seems very relaxed about it, and he went on so much about it in the end that I thought, well, I'll come and see him again in a couple of weeks like he suggested with Colin, yes, and then, you know, perhaps Colin can make him see me a bit more often, because I'm not too happy about that, you know, waiting 4 months.
I mean, I think the key for me is that he's persuaded you that you should trust him about his interpretation of what's going on.
Well, he says there are all these people that he's had for years with the same thing, and that I
Will you
can
feel
talk to
better
them.
about it when you meet them?
Well, I expect so, yes,
Yeah.
because I've never heard of this, you know, where they don't do any treatment and they just, you know, see you every 4 months. So I'll be interested to know what they say. And he seems so certain. But there's, you know, it's in the back of my mind that it could turn
Sure,
to cancer,
sure.
you know.
So 95% reassured, but not 100%.
No, I'd say that was about right, yeah.
Mark, not the first time you've had this conversation with a patient in the clinic.
No. And often I think that it is not a situation where you are able to convey everything successfully in one attempt, which is why, whilst it's finding that balance, I from regarding the Mgus condition, I don't think I could potentially say, no, I'll see Mrs. Edwards in 4 months' time, but I really want to try and help her get her head around things. And because of that, I think it's useful if we can get Colin and her husband up alongside, having another set of ears. But it's going to be the sort of situation where I realise that when Mrs. Edwards leaves the room today, her head's going to be in a real spin. She's come in with one preconception of what she expected to hear. I've told her something, there's a lot going on. I wanted to try and do that in a time span that's quite soon after her being referred up, but that often reinforces people's anxiety. So in my attempt to try and see Mrs. Edwards quickly to reassure her, what she had, I think, may have seen is that actually I've seen her within 2 or 3 weeks.
And there's something
therefore,
urgent
something
about
awful must be needed.
Something urgent about
So it's just trying to find that balance of trying to help the anxiety as quickly as I can without reinforcing the anxiety by saying, actually, there's something wrong. That's why he's seeing me quickly. It is quite technical, and what I would probably like to do next time is to give some patient information to take away and read about it, because I think reflecting on that will be a lot easier. Talking about antibodies and immune system, there's a lot to take in, and I recognise that hearing that is difficult. And so I think that the second time that I meet you will be as important as this time, to try and hopefully gain your trust a little more, and reassure you that we can get you to go on and live your life normally, which is essentially what I'd like you to try and do.
You said the word cancer to her. You said cancer,
Yes.
but you don't have it.
Yeah.
I thought watching that you'd lost her for a second or two there.
As I said it, I've realised actually all I've done is to light up any underlying concerns that you do have. But I want you to realise that actually this is a range of things, and I know that if you were to go away and look at information, it would come. You would soon realise it's associated with myeloma, the more aggressive end of the spectrum of diseases, and that is a cancer. So I wanted to try and bring it in, although it may have been slightly clumsily the way I did do it, that there was a range of conditions that this protein was involved with, one of which was a type of cancer. Because I think for you, having that cancer obviously would be the worst thing that you would want to be hearing, but I wanted to try and involve us within a conversation so that you were aware it was there, but you don't actually have it.
I'm sure that's right. It's not good to be having that conversation for the first time 12 years down the line when the paraprotein is increasing, is it? You have to have aired that and got everybody comfortable with it
There's a context.
earlier on. Sitting here looking at the way that the communication went on here, I mean, I just thought that there were wonderful things, fantastic non-verbal communication. You gave her, very good attention. You felt that you were the focus of attention.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Good eye contact and all that sort of thing. And I'm sure that people watching this for educational purposes will be interested to watch what happens with both the doctor's and the patient's hands as the conversation goes on at this level. There's stuff going on down here that's very interesting to focus on. So thank you both very much indeed.
Thank you.